gmail.com. Don't forget THE, mastermindconnection@gmail.com. And without any further ado, Augie, can you tell us about Rex? Nanu.
Oh, oh yes, I've been looking forward to this. Boy, am I been looking forward to this. Our guest tonight, today, tomorrow morning, or tomorrow afternoon, all depending on where you are around the world. We have a guest I think just about everybody would know. Unless, of course, they've been living under at least a 400-pound rock. And I tell you though, I am so excited about this because we have Rex Bear with us. This is Rex Bear of the Leak Project. He's a researcher, an explorer, and a digger of strange and unusual facts and truth. Yeah, we have to dig for truth these days also. So besides, he's an extremely successful YouTube channel, and he has the Leak Project. And of course, he's got hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and his website is leakproject.com. So for those of you that want to go to the website while you're listening here, that's the place to go, leakproject.com. And we are so looking forward to talking with him because from his long list of guests that he's had over the years and his research, he's learned so much. So this is the man with the secrets, and we're going to see if we can squeeze a few out of him by the time we're done. So welcome to the show, Rex.
Welcome, Rex.
Hey, great to see you. And disclaimer, folks, I did pay them to say that. So checks in the mail. Wanted you to know.
Thank you,
Not much, but it's $5. And no, you're all awesome. Thank you. It's great to be here and great to see people in the chat and looking forward to whatever we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
Unless it's sports, and then I'm not interested, but I don't think we came here to talk much about sports today. So yeah, what's going on?
Well, so Rex, I'm really curious, and I just want to do like a personal question. Like, I remember you from a while ago, but how did this all start for you? I mean, I know it got big fast, but how did it even start?
Oh, that's kind of a interesting question. So, like Leak Project, or just getting into podcasts, or
Yeah, getting
talking
into
about what I talk about?
Yes, that.
The journey.
The
For
journey?
sure. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it seems like I've always been talking about what we do at Leak Project and what we talk about at Leak Project, except for the past few years, I've been more into petroglyphs and the ancient cuneiform tablets. But a lot of the different discussions, the ancient astronaut theory, the colonization of space, Mars, the prophecies and scriptures, I've been researching that for years. The what I like to call the dungeon masters, whoever the people are, whatever it is behind the scenes that seems to be controlling the show in a highly orchestrated fashion. Somehow I've kind of been tapped into that my whole life. And so I think I was kind of born into it. I've always been like this. My boss used to tell me at work, I used to work for a Fortune 100 company. And my boss one time called me in and he's like, hey, can you cut down on the conspiracy talk, man? You're freaking people out. I'm like, oh yeah, sure. No problem. I can do that. So, but then they would ask me about it. I'm like, no, the big guys say don't talk about it right now. They're like, no, tell me. And I'm like, okay. So it was interesting.
I can't see you in a regular job now after seeing you, here in your studio and on location. I'm sorry, Augie, I cut you off. Sorry.
I think though that once you get involved with this stuff, if you have any kind of sense in your head and at least a little bit curious, your mind will never close down again. There is going to be more and more and more you're going to be looking for. I think it's just some of us have that in our nature, and the parachute will always be open for us.
Well, you know what they say about a parachute, and the mind. The mind and the parachute are very similar. They have to be open to work.
That's
so
right.
have an open mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I would
Absolutely.
suspect all of our audience has open minds, maybe an occasional troll or two, but so Augie, I know you have a bunch of questions you want to ask
Oh,
Rex.
there, I know there's actually one that I actually wrote down here, and I just have to ask it because you have had so many phenomenal guests. You've done so much research on your own into those guests, and what would be one of the most interesting and fascinating guests that you have interviewed?
Micah Dank is an incredible guest. We've been doing a lot of shows, connecting the dots with the ancient scriptures, and he's put together a formula with the zodiac. If you look at the constellations and then you read these prophecies and you start to connect the dots with the zodiac will and the prophecies, it's a great way to understand what used to sound extremely difficult and didn't make sense, but you're looking at it more in an allegorical mindset. Comparing that with the petroglyphs and the electric universe research that I've done, Wal Thornhill was a great interview when he talked about the possibility of Jupiter and Saturn at one point being activated as stars and much larger, and comparing that with the mythology of Zeus and Kronos, and reading the mythologies of these older civilizations. It's fascinating to think about, instead of it being a being, maybe it's a planetary body or something that took place in the heavens. Because and my friend Diamond from Oppenheimer Ranch, he's done a great job expanding my mind and the thought process of some of these petroglyphs. Instead of them being aliens, they could have been astronomical alignments or solar flares or possibly Venus or different planetary bodies. Gerald Clark, he kind of took me into the realms of getting out of my comfort zone when he would talk about these cuneiform tablets, and he had so much knowledge in the cuneiform tablets, but we kind of butted heads about the soul and Enki and Enlil and these gods and goddesses, who they were, what they were. And by butting heads with him, it made me do more research so I could be like, well, I was competitive with him. It's like, oh, well, did you read this tablet? What about this one? And in a positive fashion. I think it helped us both improve. But so those are some to think of off the top of my head. Nathaniel Gillis was a great interview recently talking about demonology and necromancy and transference of souls. Jimmy Jones, wow, he had an experience that I truly believe was like this ascension experience that will be written about in scriptures at some point. Man, what happened to him was so mind-blowing, and he talks about it now. And every time I interview him, he's so passionate and so emotional, and the energy that comes out of his just out of his heart is incredible. So we've done some great things lately, some great interviews. Who else? Paul Wallace has done
Love
some
him.
great. Yeah, Paul's great. He does a great. He is more of the mindset, I think, of a lot of these scriptures talking about extraterrestrials, and they could very well be. I used to think that too. Now I'm starting to wonder if some of these scriptures, not all of them, could be more referencing astrotheology. And once again, what took place in the heavens. And Medusa is a prime example of what could have been Venus at one point. If Venus did get knocked out of orbit and cause these major plasma arcs from its planetary body to other planetary bodies, in helping form the Grand Canyon as an example, and also the Valles Marineris, I think, or it's the biggest canyon on Mars. It's 5 times the size of the Grand Canyon. And these canyons were formed by electrical discharge. So if you study the electric universe hypothesis of there being a point in time when Venus somehow gets knocked out of its orbit and it takes this trajectory towards the sun, and in doing so, it causes all of this friction to build up, and it starts launching these like plasma arcs that, as a viewer watching it happen, as a native, maybe you're watching this take place and you're like, wow, that's, it's a god, it's a goddess. What is she doing? She used to be so beautiful. And then all of a sudden she turns into Medusa. And if you look at her, you turn into stone.
Right.
Study the electrical discharge theory with the Grand Canyon, and it starts to make a lot more sense of there being strong possibilities that the gods and the goddesses and certain references are actually referring to the planets. Another example of this is, think about it, the Watchers.
The
The
watch.
Watchers, planets are always there, they're watching. It's like they're watching you. They're always in the sky observing. So are they referring to the Watchers as the planetary bodies, or as extraterrestrials or fallen angels?
Right.
Or is it all of the above? I think it could be all of the above as well.
Yes.
So yeah.
Mhm. I think you're actually on to something here when it comes to the astrotheology part of it, because back in the older days, they had to kind of personalize things for people to understand it. Let's say that a planetary body came through the solar system and disturbed, let's say, Venus, so that it was knocked out of orbit, or at least knocked out so far that it got really elliptical, because its elliptical orbit right now is such that it almost looks like it was recaptured around the sun. So if that's the case, it could have been that planet that got so close to Earth that you had the electrical discharge that created the Grand Canyon. Or it could have been Mars that maybe was knocked out of it, because they have a gouge through their surface that is actually much bigger than what the Grand Canyon is. So one of those, I'm totally open to that. That could have happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Mars, Marduk. I think I'm
Yeah,
wondering if they're one of the same. Marduk is connected to Nibiru. Some people think Nibiru is a planet, and it could be a separate planet from Mars. However, it's also referred to as the crossing. So could Marduk be referencing, could it be referencing Mars at that point in time? And
yeah,
I have very little doubt that the geneticists of this version of humanity, or parts of this version, came from Mars, and there, because of that cataclysm that took place that created that giant canyon on Mars, they found a way to get to Mars to Earth. And in
yeah.
doing so, Cairo is Kyra, El Kyra. That's the definition of that, is camp of Mars.
Mhm.
The I think that's where they went first, was Cairo, and they
Yeah.
settled, established.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and Richard Hoagland is totally convinced we are the Martians.
Some of us. I don't think all of us
Yeah,
are.
there you go.
I think the
That's
RH
right.
negative bloodline. I think the RH negative bloodline is connected to Mars, and
Yeah.
there's more copper in RH negative blood, less iron. There's different genetics there. So as a RH negative mother, if you're having a child with and your partner is not RH negative, then they give these certain shots to the mom that will prevent the blood from destroying the fetus,
Yes.
because it looks at it as a different species.
Yes.
And a lot of people be like, where are those Neanderthals? Where does the RH negative bloodline come from? I'm going to say Mars, and those that have RH negative, because did you know that almost all of these global rulers and leaders are RH negative bloodline? And
Mhm.
there's a lot of regular folk, like peasants like myself and others out there, that that have RH negative blood too.
Yes.
But the elite class, the ruling class, that 6 degrees of separation, they have that RH negative bloodline oftentimes. And the Sumerian king list describes how the Anunnaki created the kingship and this foundation and these civilizations. But there's a king list that people don't know about that's far older than, it may not be older, but it describes much more time. It's called the Early Kings List. I've got a copy of it from the Cuneiform Parallels of the Old Testament. It's like a 1913 copy. You can get the PDF. You can download it. And they found these caches of tablets. They translate them in English. And the Early Kings List has 10 different kings that rule for 432,000 years. And then you've got that magical number 432 hertz, the sacred number of healing and prosperity. The cathedrals were tuned to 432. So 432,000 years, but there's only 10 kings that rule for 432,000 years. Then there's the flood. 10 kings.
Yeah,
Aaron Kingless has
that
8
is
kings
interesting.
blood. Yeah,
I didn't.
281,000 years versus 432,000 years also.
Wow. Wow.
And some of those kings have said to in the list, they really like they ruled for like 73,000 years. One of them, 72,
Something like
that.
that.
Yeah, it just blows you away thinking like that. But it's
No
written
wonder
in the
why.
Sumerian tablets.
No wonder
Go
why
ahead.
Well,
you're
not
into
just
your
Sumerian.
anti-aging.
Different
Sorry.
genetics. No, different genetics. You're right. And that's there's another theory about the genetics and the timeline of people. If Saturn at one point was the main star and Earth was underneath the umbrella of Saturn, and you had this, you have Venus, Mars, Saturn. Saturn's a star. It's much larger. It's called Shamash. And there's not necessarily night and day. There's not necessarily seasons. There's less radiation. There's more protection from cosmic radiation, and the genetics are different. And then those that have learned how to adjust their genetics and manipulate their genetics, 100,000 years isn't a very long time. But the king list does describe, in the early king list, these kings rule for what's called a Sar. And a Sar is a time period of 3,600 years. And I find that interesting, not necessarily, well, I do find it interesting because of this. I find it interesting partially because Zechariah Sitchin says the 3,600 year return of Nibiru, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a planet. Could they be on a spaceship? Hypothetically, if they're powerful enough to create dynasties and travel space and create civilizations, and they've studied genetics and space travel, etc., would they possibly be able to create a mothership of some type and travel the stars or travel these planetary bodies, and every 3,600 years while they're doing this orbit, they're checking on all their colonies in space.
Yep.
And every star they get back, and they're like, okay, let's go check on the kingship here on planet Earth. And they're seeing how everything's going. And they're like, okay, that king is still doing his job. We'll keep him in office, for another SAR. We'll go out, do our thing. We'll come back. Kind of the vibe I get. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like coming back to check on their children.
Yeah, exactly.
There's something about that rings
makes
true. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
But
And they get back. Yeah.
I,
They're like, really? McDonald's on every corner?
What happened? Exactly.
Sorry to interrupt. What was that?
De-evolution.
Yeah, definitely.
Where have you
Yep.
been traveling to, Rex?
Oh, I do a lot of stuff in the Four Corners area: Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, and I've done some stuff up in the Northwest recently. Just got back from Iowa, and the Midwest is a trip because if you drive through Kansas and Nebraska, if you know where to go, there's a list of these decommissioned missile silos that you can go check out along the way, and most of them have been filled in. But then you start to realize, like, you pick up the landscape, and every area that has one of these missile silos is going to have these towers, and it's just amazing to think about how in the Midwest, Uncle Bob has got his farm and he doesn't even know it, but there's a nuclear missile underneath his corn crop. It's just a trip. Yeah. But
Wow.
I'm a big fan of it out here in Colorado and Four Corners area because there's so much mystery, like the San Luis Valley, the mysterious valley out there, UFO sightings, Dulce. I'm just an hour from Dulce, the Archuleta Mesa area. There's a lot of petroglyphs and native ruins out here. You've got the Mesa Verde and the Hopi Prophecy of the Four Corners area. I get a good energy, I get a powerful vibe out here. It just seems like it's where I should be right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I've seen there's also a petroglyph out, I think in that area, somewhere where there's old Hebrew writing that the Native Americans say it's been there as long as they know. Do you remember that one?
I haven't been there, but I need to go. It's in New Mexico. Yes.
Yeah.
I want to go check that out. That sounds fascinating.
That tells us the Hebrews were here a couple of thousand years ago.
Mm-hmm. Mhm. One of the original tribes, one of the 12 tribes are possibly, I think are the Navajo and
Yeah.
other native tribes. I'm meeting with with a Zuni elder on Thursday. He's going to maybe take us out to some really cool sites. But I had a chance to go to this sacred Zuni site a couple months ago in Arizona, and we found a petroglyph that looked like a Nazi UFO, the Bell UFO,
Hmm.
and it had like a trajectory beam coming out of it, and it looked like it was picking something up. It was so weird. I got the footage of it, and then they have this story of the cosmic eggs being handed over that came from space, and I'm really skeptical now about the whole alien phenomena. I used to be totally opposite. I was much more into the theories of, okay, yeah, these grays are, coming from outer space. And
Right.
the reason is because who are the really famous abduction case, Betty and Barney Hill,
Yeah.
Yes.
right? Yeah. They said that their captors showed them this place in Zeta Reticuli, and that's why we think they came from here. But after all the research about these gray dudes, I don't think they come from another part of space. I think they're like literally in another dimension, but right
Yeah.
here.
Really?
Right here. And somehow we've opened up these barriers and they're coming through. But the watchers that we've been told about, and the stories of UFOs, man. I mean, they got UFOs in Renaissance times that are, you've got artwork of UFOs with laser beams that are hitting the third eye of people that are praying.
Yeah.
Right. Hello.
Something interesting.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then I used to think, okay, they're from outer space, but are they? How do we know they're not Atlanteans? Or how do we know that it's even necessarily alien? It could be some type of trickster. The more research I do into the hypothesis of we're like experiencing living in this superorganism, what if it's just a big disguise? It's something disguising itself as alien, but it's not.
Interesting.
Yeah, we
Very.
don't really know. But then we have that old FBI document. I think it's from back in the 1958 or something like that, where they say they know that the UFOs are interdimensional crafts.
Mm. Mm.
No, John D'Souza talks about that, and he's been on your show several times, and I think he probably mentioned on the he did with us, and interdimensional, that could mean absolutely from anywhere.
I know. It could be freaking anywhere. Exactly. And it could be
Yeah,
right in front of you and you wouldn't even know it.
yeah.
Now here's another thing though. I have close friends. I have, dear friends that have had these experiences with the grays, many of them for large chunks of their life. And they even talk to me off air and be like, hey man, I gotta go to work and act like nothing's going on. And some of these people have very prestigious jobs, and
Yeah.
I'm like, some of these people, I'm like, that makes sense while they're abducting you because they want to know what you're doing, where you're at. That makes sense.
Right.
But he's even questioning now, are they necessarily aliens?
Yeah.
They coming in and out of dimension like a fuzzy television set when you're trying to adjust something.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be. It's not like that anymore. But you remember back in the
Right.
day, you got to get the antenna all fixed and get people
That's right.
focused. So I think it could be much more nefarious. But it could also at the same time, what if it's symbiotic? What if it's kind of like a cow is gonna a wild animal is gonna hate insects, flies getting on its ear or whatever. It's annoying, but it's taking little
Yeah.
niblets out of its flesh. I don't know, man. It's just very disturbing. I don't even want to think about it that way. It's feeding off us.
That's interesting. I've never thought of
Yeah.
it that way. Wow. I gotta wrap my
Well,
brain around that.
I see we
here's
have
another.
about, yeah.
Well, I was just going
Yeah,
to say, here's one thing that has really taken me to the side of some of these abductions being psyops too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whitley Strieber. I recently
Mhm.
talked to Mr. Strieber. Nice guy. I enjoyed the interview. He said, you know, when he got abducted, that he got probed with this device to extract sexual fluids. And the way that he described it, it reminded me of like what somebody would do to extract fluids from a prized horse. And I said that to him, and he said, yeah, it was the same kind of thing, but smaller. And I'm like, that's interesting. Why?
Yeah.
Why is interdimensional species going to use the same technologies? They come here from a dimension far, far away, or from a dimension that's right next to us, but they can get, they're
Right.
interdimensional, or they can travel through solar systems, and they need to use the same technologies to extract that. Doesn't make
That's a great
sense.
idea. That
Yeah.
is a great idea. Yes. Wow.
So who's doing it? Was that, and
Yeah.
was that an experience? That's just a question. I don't know. But
Right.
what if powers that there's certain factions out there? I have a feeling it's connected to like Nazis for some reason.
Mm,
Project Paperclip, they brought in a bunch of Nazis
Yeah.
mm,
after the war. They kind of infiltrated in many levels of intelligence. Maybe they weren't Nazis, but they got, and the Nazis, I think, were working with a species that wasn't human during
mhm.
World War II. I'm almost convinced of it. They're working with
Hmm.
these beings. But back to what we're back to this. I'm getting 5G right now. Oh yeah. Okay, so here we go. No, you will not assimilate me. They, imagine a psyop where they abduct somebody that they know is, you know, writing novels or, you know, writing some really cool books, and they knew that if they abduct that person, that they could then share that experience and put that on the map, make it popular, make it the
Yeah.
next trend, push an agenda, not even knowing so.
Yeah.
You know, thinking you genuinely got abducted by freaking aliens because you remember seeing these insectoid dudes or these reptoid dudes or these grays or whatever you remember seeing. But would it be possible that they could do some kind of electronic slash hallucinogenic manipulation, make
Yes.
it look that way, package it, and then let their work go? Okay, then
Yeah.
that person goes out, talks about it, gets a bunch of coverage, other people pick it up, they make a movie out of it, they push
Yep.
this agenda of
Yeah.
little brain coming from Zeta Reticuli.
Right.
Could very well be. And see, now we're 1 minute away from the bottom of the hour, where we have to tell somebody about why they should be drinking acid-free coffee. And
Oh.
I need some of
we're
that.
gonna get, and when we get back, Rex, there's one thing that I'm really fascinated with, and I've had long discussions with Noya on this one, and that is what is going on at Antarctica. So when we get back, let's talk a little bit about that. I know you interviewed, many people, several people that really have some insight on this because I know one of them has been there, and maybe some other insight that I think the listeners would really hear. So let's do that video, Mac, and then let us know when we're back because I can't see you.
I knew that there was a need because my father had a need. And if my father had a need, then how many other people have a need?
The key to Tyler's coffee is the roasting process. Because Mother Nature makes the coffee bean. We can only work with the processing.
We knew we wanted to go USDA certified organic. So we wanted to be the purest and cleanest coffee in the world. We had to source stuff from Africa, we had to source stuff from Brazil, we had to source stuff from Chile. And we put it through our proprietary Z-roasting processor. So what that really truly means to you is that the coffee doesn't have inflammatory properties in it. I'm dedicated to serving 50 million Americans that suffer from stomach-related modalities, and also the millions of other people that just deserve a great tasting cup of coffee that's healthy and safe.
We are talking with Rex Beer of the Leak Project. And we're getting into some really interesting stuff here. And if you haven't heard what we talked about in the first half of the show, you missed it. You got to go back and see it. Because I would love to talk a little bit about Antarctica, because you, Rex, you have interviewed quite a few people that have some really solid insights of Antarctica. And I would love to hear about that. And by the way, you're muted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, that's another guest that I had that was awesome. And his name is Eric Hecker, I think is his name. And let me double check on his last name. Details. Yeah, Eric Hecker, super cool guy. He was in Antarctica. He was there. He actually spent almost a year there. So out of all the people that I've talked to that I would say are the most credible would be him, because he was there. And it's so extreme that even if you've got the best gear, you're not going to be able to do much out there during most of the year without major backup and shelter. So even being there for almost a year, to get just a mile or two away from base was almost impossible at times. And I've heard a lot of stuff about the, underground bases and the Anunnaki being there. And I mean, I don't know if you're this is one question I ask you. If you're the Anunnaki, if you were a superior race and you can do whatever you want, are you going to hide out in Antarctica?
That's a good point.
No, I'm not going to hide out in Antarctica. Hell no. You're going to do it.
Right?
You're not going to. So
you're going to go to the Maldives. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But there's something going on there. Something weird, because you've got the Admiral Byrd that went out there, and then they left in a hurry. And there's a lot of research into the inner Earth. So if anything's going on, in my opinion, it might have something to do with that being a nexus point to a location inner Earth. And maybe there are pockets inner Earth where the civilizations have thrived through multiple events and cataclysmic events on the surface, and they might call us surface dwellers, and it might be beautiful in there. I mean, there might be oceans and luxurious environments. I can't prove any of this, but it was weird how what's his name came back from there, the astronaut that came back. I can't believe I can't remember his name. He was the first guy to go to the moon. What's his name? First guy to go to the moon.
Armstrong?
Supposedly.
Debatable. Wasn't it Neil?
Okay, who was it that went to Antarctica? Astronaut gets freaked out. Can't believe I can't remember his name right now. Buzz Aldrin.
Buzz.
No, Buzz.
He goes out there. I can't. We're all we're all getting 5G right now.
Right.
Yeah. Buzz said, hey, he got freaked out. So I don't know what he saw out there, but there was a bunch of very famous people that went out there, aristocratic people that went out there for what, I don't know. Maybe they found remains of an ancient civilization. That I wouldn't be surprised with one bit if there are remains of ancient civilizations out there. Yeah. And it could be possible that there's a small pocket of highly advanced beings that are ancient, that are still alive, and they're geneticists and they've got high technologies, and there's maybe not many of them, so they don't want to make themselves known because they want to hide behind the shadows or whatever. Maybe they can go to the Maldives if they want, but they choose to stay out there. I just there's too many questions that I have on both sides. So the more research I do, the more people I interview, the more questions I have. I'll think I got it figured out, and then somebody will throw a curveball at me. I used to be pretty convinced that these cows that were getting mutilated with laser precision. I'm like, oh yeah, aliens. And people are saying they need the substance so these grays can sit in the baths and get their substance that way. And I'm like, okay. But then my friend Penelope is like, Rex, come on, they're coming from another star system. What the hell do they need cow fat for? They'll just 3D print it. I'm like, you're right, Penelope, they will. They don't need that. So I'll tell you this, shit. It's an experience.
There is something going on down there, and you have comments from different people. Like, I know what Buzz said when he came back and left the hospital. He said, I have looked pure evil in the face. That was one of the comments that he did. And from there on, they asked him questions and he didn't say much. But that he did say, I have looked pure evil in the face. What was that? And if it is like others have said that there are three, super soldiers, that the three large spacecraft that was flash frozen under the ice, and they have people there with elongated skulls, and I guess we should probably call it rumors for now, but there's something there. Even Admiral Byrd said when he came back and stopped in Chile, and he said, there will be a day when we have to deal with crafts that will travel from pole to pole in 30 minutes. So all these comments, they tell us something. Now, if there was one of them, yeah, I could see, blow that off, but there's so many of them. There has to be a common core somewhere.
What do you think it is?
Well,
I know you
first
can.
of all, we know that the Germans built base 211. There's papers on that back written in German. I got some of them. And besides that, they went down and tried to blow the place up when Operation Operation High Jump. That went bad. So they limped out of there. A lot of American soldiers died there. They sunk a ship and they just limped back back home after the Germans kicked that stuff out of them.
Mm-hmm.
So there is something
What stuff
going
is that, Augie?
Stuff. You know
Sounds
what
like-
George
sounds
Collins
like-
says about stuff, don't you?
So can we
Oh, yeah.
can we take a couple of questions from the chat room? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's one from Margaret. Rex, have you heard of the God voice weapon?
I've heard of the V2K, the God voice weapon. I don't know. Maybe is that
Maybe.
referencing the technology that will make you think you're hearing God?
Right.
Essentially.
The voice to skull. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Sage asks, have you heard about the large redheads?
Oh yeah,
Yeah?
absolutely.
Tell us.
Oh yeah, Genghis Khan was he was supposed to be one of the large redheads. Many of these rulers that we look at today that have completely different depictions of who they were, well, they actually had red hair, green eyes, very tall, and wouldn't be surprised if some of these stories of the giants actually come from these Viking dudes, these Nordic dudes that came over on boats that were 7 feet tall, 7+ feet tall, white skin, tattoos all over their bodies, wearing, helmets with animal horns on them, possibly, or just different types of helmets. They get off the boats. They've got technologies that the natives don't necessarily have. They're much larger, and they could say whatever they want. And it could be, that's one of the things I forgot to mention, the early Kings list, the 432,000 year Kings list. Guess where the kingship came from?
Where?
No?
I was waiting for a reply as long as I could. Like 2 seconds, then I got to say it. It was the water came from the water. It was like this merman that came out of the water, a Murus or a Boris. He comes out of the water in this fish suit, and he gives technology and teachings to the peoples that were acting barbaric. Teaches them law, teaches them order, teaches them props. Came from the water. It didn't come from space.
Huh.
And it's 432,000 year king list before the flood, not 281,000 before the flood,
Wow.
which is interesting.
Very.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that leads the question, Atlantis. I don't think it's really a fish dude that comes out that's like flapping, like, like flops out. It's like talking to
Here,
people
hold
with
this
this
hook.
bill. Yeah. It's like, and they're like, we understand you. But I think it was somebody that had some kind of suit that came out, because it said he spent the day with them. So several days, and he didn't eat. He just told them what to do. Then he went back in the water, came back the next day, went back in the water. So how do we know that I think it's a combination. I think that there's beings.
Yeah.
I think we've been visited from beings from other planets and peoples from other planets, different dimensions. This planet, I think a lot of the stuff that people say are aliens or the Nephilim. The Nephilim were literally just Vikings getting it on with natives. And the natives were looking at it like, the natives are 4.5, 5 feet tall, and these Vikings are 7.5 feet tall. And it was just, to them, it was, they didn't know how to describe it. And through the years and through the times, they get explained differently and translated differently. And then sometimes religion obviously becomes agenda driven, military driven, government driven, industry driven. It's kind of the underpinnings oftentimes of entire nations and what makes nations rise and fall, and the religions behind them and the gods and goddesses behind that. So it just seems like there's all these different layers. To say that one is the answer is really cut and dry. I would say it's much more plausible that it's all of the above, stuff that you can imagine can happen.
Coming out of the water, that actually make a lot of sense to me, because decades ago, when I was down in Greencastle, Indiana, teaching flying there for 2 years before I moved on up into the States, I became a very good friend with an airline captain for the old Allegheny Airlines. And he flew routes from the United States down deep into the Caribbean. And he said that there were one place that he used to fly over where he could see that when it was totally dark, the moon was not out, then he could see that there was globs of light under the water.
Wow.
In the Caribbean. They were not very bright light, but you could see that there was light in the water. Yeah. And he said he had them, pegged where they are, but he said maybe someday he would like to go out there and go diving. And I don't know if it happened or not, but he said there were light under the water. And that tells me something was down there creating that light. That could be, like we have heard about, some saying that there's a dome with somebody living under the water. Hey, I'm all on board with that. That could happen.
Oh yeah, me too. Super on board.
So
The Abyss. Remember The Abyss?
Huh?
Remember that movie, The Abyss?
Oh yeah.
A lot of people forget about that. That's a classic.
Oh man, that was a phenomenal movie.
Yeah.
So
we need to see that one again.
Mm-hmm.
There's another question from Nick. Any 100% true confirmation stories, Rex?
Well, say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Were there any 100% true confirmation stories that you've experienced over your years?
In regards to what?
I guess.
Explain in more detail, please. What do you mean by that? 100% confirmation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question would be, has anything been 100% confirmed? I mean, with everything that we talk about in our conspiracy theories, which aren't conspiracy, is it alien? Is it dimension? I don't think we have anything 100%. Do we?
Yeah, we do. We do.
What? Coffee?
Yes. Yes,
coffee.
We do. Margaret,
I have extra acid in my coffee.
Margaret asked about the God voice or something story. Yeah, there is. There is a technology that has been given a patent issued by the United States Patent Office. It's called voice to skull. Google it and you will find out that the government has, and this is a government thing now, they have technology through they beam radiation at you, and they code voice in on that beam, and you hear it in your skull as a voice. So when somebody say, "Oh, God told me to go and kill all those people," yeah, that could have been the CIA. That could be anybody, because that technology is there and is totally confirmed. That's the only thing I can think about.
Yeah, and perhaps tied to MK Ultra and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Voice to skull technology embedded in the 5G. That was just a statement. Yeah. Okay. Wow.
I actually think 5G and V2K, V2K is going to be a much lower frequency. 5G is not even going to make it through the skin. 5G
Yeah.
is so weak. Oh yeah, I studied that extensively. I used to be quite concerned about 5G, and I even started interviewing people that helped develop it. And I am not for 5G, so please do not take what I'm saying out of context. I am totally fine with no 5G. I think 5G personally sucks because it's a weak signal. It's a millimeter wave, so it's really fine spikes. Imagine something that's moving at approximately 10, 12, 20 billion cycles per second. And that's pretty fast. So it's the way that it moves. It's more for targeting. Like it's definitely great for tracking. And if you've got one right next to you, that's why one of the reasons they want to put them on every single corner is because even raindrops will block the signal. It sucks, right? So like, let's put them on the cereal box. Let's put them on the coffee makers. Let's put them everywhere. Bob, 5G everywhere. No, but it wouldn't work well for V2K. V2K, like you want to do an electronic low frequency. You can actually look up patents to the V2K. It's been around for years. It's an old technology. They got stuff now they could put on the TV. Probably. I don't know. Maybe not. No, they would never do that. They would not do that. They love us. They would never. But yeah, 5G. They kind of gave, have you noticed they don't even talk about it much anymore? They used to be like, we're going to try 5G at stadiums and we're going to do this with 5G and that with 5G. And now it's like, where is it?
It's old news. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's old news. I don't know. I have to tell you, there were some times during my nursing career when we got a psychotic, air quotes, patient in who was having all of these crazy ideas, but if you listen really closely, there was like some threads that made sense. That made me go, wonder if somebody's doing something to him. I mean, it really made me wonder, and I've seen enough of them to see that there was a pattern. So yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah,
but I still question everything.
I question everything, yeah, including my aluminum foil hat.
They work. Get some aluminum foil.
Yeah, that's just funny. I saw an advertisement for a box of tin foil, and it said on the box, "Free hat in every one."
That's right.
That's a great marketing ploy right there. Yeah, that's the box I want. Let's see.
Oh man.
So Rex, what's next for you? Where are you going? What are you adventuring to? Or
ooh, geez. That the question isn't what I'm doing. The question is, what aren't I doing? I don't know if you've ever seen
that's
Ferris
probably
Bueller's Day Off. That I just love that line. It's not what do you say? It's not what we're going to do today. It's what we're not going to do today. It's like we're going to do everything. We're going to do it all. I actually am going to Navajo Lake again soon. It's receded enough to where there's areas out there, pockets of these homes and a town was submerged underwater. We're going to go check that out. And then Thursday I'm going to go hang out with the Zuni elder, and he's going to take us out somewhere around the Four Corners area that's off limit to the white man. So I get to go hang out with the cool people. I'm not white today. So it's really cool. What I've really noticed is we're all so similar that the whole race card is just obsolete. They're trying to pitch the whole critical race, whatever you call it, and it just seems like a failed attempt to try and piss people off. People are so past that now, which is great. I've learned so much from people from different places on the world. When you get to meet different people, it really brings up the enlightenment and the consciousness.
Yes, amazing.
You remember, history is pretty much screwed up, because I think when you were in Tucson, Rex, you got introduced to, I forget their name for right now, but there were some people here that done the research, and they found that between what was Phoenix, what is Phoenix now, to the Mexican border, there was something like 1.5 million or 2 million people living there 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah, and there were hieroglyphs in other languages. They know the Vikings were here, the Hebrews were here, and they were the Phoenicians were here, and they were all trading and got along.
That's right. That's right. I went to a petroglyph in Utah, Fry Canyon, 6,000 feet elevation. Thanks to my friend Alien Allen. We go out there and there's a petroglyph of a sailboat that looks like a Viking sailboat. And it's in the desert at 6,000 feet elevation, and it's maybe only 1,000, 1,200 years old. That means that there was water levels that went to that location just 1,000 plus years ago.
Wow.
The Great Salt Lake is the remains of a giant ocean, and much of Utah was in water. Some people think that it happened thousands of years ago. It actually was hundreds of years ago. Much of Utah was underwater, and to think that they were able to go, they went through the inlets of Arizona as well. There are Roman artifacts in Arizona that have been uncovered. So fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, they were here. So that does away with Columbus, doesn't it?
Yes, and they just recently admitted that, which was nice. And there's a 6-year-old YouTube video where these people are in Nova Scotia showing these structures that are Viking structures, and like, these are Viking structures. And but now the mainstream recently came out and said, no, Christopher Columbus, sorry. Religion. Oh, wait, they used religion to usurp up the nation. Literally, we were just talking about that. They used the religion foundation, tied it to the government, the industries, the law, and they pulled it all in.
Big
Pretty
shock.
spooky to think about. I mean, I went through I don't know how much time we got left, but I just want to say real quick that when I came back through Kansas, went through Colorado, we drove past a town called Grenada. And there's a little, actually pretty large, several mile square radius area called Amachi. That is where they held people of Japanese heritage.
Wow.
There, 10,000 people during World War II. 120,000 people they took out of their homes because they had their Japanese descent, and made them stay in a camp. And it's a concentration camp. It wasn't as bad as some of the ones in Germany and China and Russia, but that doesn't not make it a concentration camp.
Right.
I read about it. They had virtually no heat. They had to deal with up to 110 in the summer, below 20 in the winter.
Wow.
I think they had one fireplace. A family of 7 had to fit in a small room, brick fireplace, one light bulb, no furniture. Any privacy that they would get had to come from a sheet. Armed guards, they weren't leaving. They got taken into that camp, and people said, "Oh, this will never happen here. We have the Constitution." And now they won't use race; they'll use something else. But that's for a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
No.
absolutely. And
Let's hope it doesn't happen. Let's pray, whatever, focus on the positive, and just
right.
know about the past, remember the past, so the future doesn't repeat the past,
Exactly.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
I want some non-acid coffee.
We have to get Rex some coffee.
Can I have some of the non-acid
once-
coffee? I drink a lot of it.
Yeah, we
once
do.
you know and understand the problem, you don't have to think about it all the time. We can bury ourselves in the problem-solving process.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good.
We have about 3 minutes left, Augie. Is there anything you want to ask Rex? Your favorite question? Or?
Oh, yes, the favorite question. You probably actually are speaking to a large part of the world, but if the whole world, I mean, if you had the chance, talk to the whole world and the whole world were listening, what would you tell them?
Be the change you want to see.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
If I had
Boy,
to
that
tell them
covers
something, because that's not asking a question, that's telling them something.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's what I would tell them.
That's good.
Boy,
Rex, thank
that
you.
covers it.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Yeah,
This is great. Thanks for
has
letting me
been
vent.
fun.
This is awesome. I feel like I should be paying y'all like this is like a therapy session. Great now.
Come hang out
Ready to go
anytime.
hiking, you know? All right. In the cold. This is
Yeah,
great.
yeah. This has been so fun. Last time we met, I was a guest on your show.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sure we'll do many more of these.
yeah.
Hope so. That'd be
That'd be
great.
great.
Nice.
Well, we sure enjoyed this, and yeah, we need to do things like this. The more, the better, because every time that you and me and Nori and everybody out there is going on the air, there's going to be somebody out there that hears something that changes their life.
Nanu nanu.
Yeah.
No.
None.
One mind at a time.
All
All right.
right.
Powerful
Thanks,
is the mind.
everybody. Thanks,
Thank
Rex,
you.
for being with us.
Thank you.
Mac, we'll see you next week. Everybody, right here
See you
next week,
later.
next Tuesday.
Live long and
Bye.
prosper.